Hey, all right. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us for our inaugural pilot episode of What's on Your Radar. This is going to be an awesome show. And the idea behind it is it's senior practitioners within the industry bringing something to you that's on their radar right now. Why is it on their radar? What's the bigger implications of it? And how do they see it? We're hoping that you're absolutely going to enjoy the show. Eric Taylor and I will be regularly hosting it with a rotating third seat. And we are very excited to have Steve Cardinal from Soteria with us today as that rotating seat. It's going to be about 5 minutes per individual what's on their radar, 5 minutes of discussion. Then we're going to switch to the next panelist. Having said all that, let me bring in our co-host and our special guest, Eric Taylor and Steve. Eric, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, bud. What's going on?
Not much. And Steve, thank you so much for stepping into the fire and experiencing what's on your radar.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be on mic with you and working with this project.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's just dig in. Steve, what's on your radar?
GLBA, Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. It's been around for like a long time, you're saying. And yes, it has, although just last year it went through a big update with a lot more cybersecurity stuff related to, I think it was part 314, the standards for safeguarding customer information. Steve, why the heck did that end up on your radar? When new regulations come out or they get updated, certainly already pops up on the radar, but sometimes it's one of those things that just goes off into the background until you actually have a need for it. And well, now I have a need for it. We have, I work in a consulting world. And so working with clients who are like, hey, that applies to me. What does this all mean? And so I need now to understand the raw details of it. And so starting to search around on the internet for, let me look at the legal text of it. And I don't know about you, I hate reading legal text, but that's where our information is. So started looking at that. Well, most of the links go to the Code of Federal Regulations. This is an amazing resource. So you get not only here's what the text of the bill or act or regulation is, you get the reasoning behind it. And that was an amazing find for me. I mean, I kind of knew it was out there, but starting to go into there and seeing, oh, this was open for comments. And the comments section, people said, this is a good thing. And these other people said, this is a bad thing. And here's our reasoning on why we made the regulation what it was based on that feedback. Gives you incredible insight into what they're thinking. I know as a security practitioner, when I try to read, say, something like HIPAA, and I say, what do they mean by that? And what does that mean for me? If I choose to do X, Y, Z, am I going to get in trouble? Is that not really the best practice? Everything is so vague. Being able to read exactly what they were thinking when they made the definitions, when they made the rules themselves, super, super helpful. And so with GLBA, or the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act, it applies to all sorts of financial organizations. So not just banks and mortgage companies, but payday lenders. Where do you turn in a guitar to get some money there? Those places, real estate appraisers, stuff like that. There's a lot of organizations who GLBA actually applies to. And so recognizing as I'm reading through this stuff, who is it applicable to? What does it actually mean? MFA everywhere. Did you know it has MFA everywhere? If you have a system that either holds personally, it's not PII that they're talking about either. It's identifiable financial information. So it has to be related to some financial, services that you have been providing to them. If you have a system that either holds that or connects to it, that system has to have MFA. What exactly does that mean? That's why I'm reading it. And that's why it is on my radar, because before you jump into trying to apply this, you need to know, what am I getting into? What do they really mean by this? And so that is why GLBA is on my radar. Guys, got any questions on that? Comments? Have you dug into the federal regulations before?
It's interesting, Steve, because I have done a lot of, federal work, right, with FISMA, FedRAMP, then HIPAA. So this resource actually sounds amazing, because if you have ever Googled like HIPAA and you just try to read like the small font, big margin, legalese, if you will, of politician bureaucratic bloat, it's very difficult to discern anything of value out of it.
Yeah, and actually, it's the Federal Register. I think I had my wrong tab up there, so I probably gave the wrong name. But the Federal Register, and so anytime I think in this case, the FTC says, "All right, we're putting out something new," they have to publish it, and so it gets the Daily Journal of the United States government. But the Daily Journal doesn't just say, "Here's the rule," here's why we did it, and here's all the discussions we had, and I have found that to be invaluable, because when I just see the regulation at the end, it's like, I have no idea what they're really thinking about here. And this gives you the thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Eric, what do you think?
It's going to be interesting. I mean, the one thing I always hold back in this, I'm one of these guys that just tell it how it is. If these mandates are requiring MFA and they're requiring it, what actual ramifications are they going to end up having by non-compliance, right? I mean, not to get political, but we've seen Biden do his executive order earlier this year, giving everybody the chance to do MFA within 60 days. We have no follow-up, and rumor has it 90% of the company or the government contractors and entities that are supposed to implement MFA by now are nowhere near it. You take GMMC, that was supposed to be this grand mother of security, and it literally had I think 13 or 14 more controls than the NIST 800-171. And they're like, we can't meet this. It's going to cost us way too much. It's like, but you were self-attestation that you were 800-171. It's not that far of a bridge to cross. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of what CMMC looked like it was going to be, and then when they redid it and they pulled out, one of the M stands for maturity, and guess what? They pulled out all the maturity measures.
Yeah.
But that's another topic that we would dive into.
Yeah, that's a totally different topic. But Eric did spawn a thought for me, Steve. In that Federal Register, does it cover non-compliance or sanctions or anything like that, or is it literally just here's the law, do it, and that's it?
I didn't see anything added to it directly related to changes in enforcement. So they're really only talking about here are the changes and the regulation itself. Of course, I had originally just been looking for, just give me the new law. And I finally found it, but all the other stuff was taking me to the Federal Register. And at first I was like, what is all this? And I was like, ooh, what is all this? This is awesome. But I haven't seen any changes for enforcement. My guess is that it's going to be the same as always, which is if you have a problem and you get, a breach or something like that, they're then going to look and see, oh, you didn't have that stuff. Guess what? The fines are going to be really big versus you had all this stuff and they got you anyway because China's just better than you. You're not going to get dinged that badly. So my guess is it's going to be someone has to raise raise their hand, say, I think that they're, I'm an insider and I just got fired and I'm really ticked off. And so I'm going to tell you all the bad things they did. Or you have a cyber incident that you have to report and everyone finds out you were negligent.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to due diligence. When you are having to report that you've had a breach, going through and saying that you are doing due diligence to achieve a certain compliancy. If you're not even doing that, like we'll take medical because you mentioned HIPAA a little bit ago, but if your assistant is throwing medical records out, unshredded and all that in your dumpster out back, I mean, yeah, and that was an actual case that was brought up. So I couldn't believe it myself. I'm like, they really did what? Huh? But
that was one of the early ones back from the early 2000s, right? CVS just had bins of, pharmacy records out in the back of that cup.
I was like, you didn't even use a shredder? You just flat out just throwing reams of paper over.
No, it's the trash. That's where you throw trash, in the trash. So it's too funny. All right, let's keep the train rolling. Eric, what is on your radar?
Well, mine is much more of a technical than a high level, so I will do my best to, go with that avenue. But my thing is ICMP. most people know IMC protocol is ping, or anytime you do a ping to a Google or Yahoo or anything like that, that is the IMCP protocol. Well, we always known in forensics that there is that buffer, like you can expand and send more data in a ping protocol, and try to see if you can get real high latency, things of that nature. But there's always been a payload that you could build into ICMP. Well, now on GitHub, and we'll share this out on Discord, in the Discord chat, I guess, a little bit later, but there is a way now you can take ICMP data and actually using PowerShell to transmit and receive payloads from a Linux server. And we're going through this. So I'm like, okay, this should not be that hard to track down. I was wrong. Most firewalls will see IMCP traffic. They're not capturing the byte size. We've tested 3 different EDRs. They're just seeing that ICMP communications happen. They're not seeing the payload size. Like Windows has a much smaller payload of 53 or 56, if I remember correctly, and Linux has a bigger one around 85 or 86. So looking at trying to find out, okay, can we start filtering out anything in our network telepathy, using existing tools? Can we find anything that's over 100 bytes of data in the ICMP protocol? And until we start looking at doing a network tap, which is going to add even more complexity and start constantly getting PCAPs to be sent off to our SIM, right now it doesn't look like there's a way to do that yet. So it's going to be very interesting, and it's only going to be a matter of time. Like literally, I fully suspect this to be weeks, if not days, not talking months or years, where threat actors are going to find out about this, and they're going to start using this to download data. Because in the testing that we've done several WannaCry, other ransomware payloads through the ICMP download, and most EDRs are not finding it in the download stream like you would with a traditional browser. So it's implanting it on the workstation. Now, granted, most EDRs are thankfully, stopping it at the launch, but it's not going to take long. This is going to be really, really interesting to see how this one goes out, and if the EDR folks can get up to speed and start analyzing that traffic. Because like I said, none of them are doing it. And when I showed them the GitHub repository, they're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, it definitely makes the threat greater. Can you just clarify something for me? So the attack sequence is initial compromise,
Yep.
right? And then they drop this PowerShell on that's going to be making the request to a C2 over ICMP. So the workstation that's compromised is pinging out somewhere on the internet. And in addition to that ping, there's additional bytes of payload going out.
Correct.
Okay.
So instead of downloading your stuff from like a Mega Share or Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, you're running it through ICMP.
Oh, because the ping reply is where the data is being done. And what do they just parse the binary out into? Because they can only put so many bytes in that buffer, right? So are they breaking the binary?
You can put it, but you can actually chunk it up. You can actually chunk it up like a RAR file. So if it goes over, I forget how many bytes it is, whatever the cap is for ICMP, but if it goes over that cap, it will do it like a RAR file and split it up into separate files.
Yeah, this is concerning. I mean, if you did, so you could disable endpoints from pinging, right? I mean, that would be kind of a gross overcorrection, but you could do it.
You could, but think of how many networking tools that a lot of MSPs and internal IT folks use for even network discovery through their RMM tool, or like I said, their network tool, that we got a new device over here because it's pinging back, and then it's going to start doing its analysis to see what kind of device it is. If you're removing the ability to do any sort of ICMP traffic inside, you're crippling a lot of the networking tools already.
Yeah, but I wonder if you can disable initiate a ping from a workstation versus replying to a ping. I don't know if the protocol allows you to just
But you're going to
differentiate.
reply. You will have to reply, or you'll have to get an initiation ping, a request, before you'll get a reply.
Yeah, I know, but the initiation would be coming from the MSP administrator tool. The workstation, if the workstation could only reply to pings, not initiate pings, that might be a way to solve it. But like, this is a Band-Aid I'm talking about. This is not that. Steve, what do you got?
I mean, certainly for the longest time we've had, a best practice of at the edge, very much controlling ICMP coming in, coming out, right? You have tools that would be authorized to both send and receive stuff, but your general workstations, if I have 500 people in my organization, again, if I have proper segmentation and whatnot, I may be able to allow my network administrators to be able to ping, but not my HR people, because they're on a separate segment, and therefore they're not going to be able to ping to SC2 outside the organization. Within the network laterally, but I don't think that this is the issue, because my C2 hopefully isn't within the organization. Of course, you mentioned PowerShell and then Linux, and I just shuddered at putting those two things together. But I feel like this has kind of been around, using ICMP for data exfil, I don't think is particularly new. Maybe this particular tool, the way it chunks it up, but I would like to think that our firewalls and other things could pick up a lot of ICMP. Maybe not, because if your packet size is limited in some way and it has to get chunked up. Now I'm going to see 5,000 ICMP packets going out from this destination. That's the thing I would be looking for, is that correlation of a lot of packets, because ICMP is typically I send a packet, I receive a packet, not I receive 1,000 packets or 5,000 packets. So that's what I would kind of be looking for from my tooling, is can I pick up a large increase of ICMP traffic between one or more endpoints.
Maybe. I mean, I know right now they're not exfilling through ICMP just because, trying to exfil terabytes of data from a network through that
Takes a long
protocol,
time, and it's very noisy.
it would be very, very bad.
Yeah.
So, and I think it may actually choke out on it, but that's why they still will use a mega share or some sort of third-party cloud infrastructure to upload that data to.
Right on. Fun stuff. Unless you're a defender.
Yeah. So, Gerald, what's on your radar? We want to hear what you got.
Thanks for asking, Eric. So yeah, let me do this action right here and then do this. So
I'm getting dizzy.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So I don't even know if I can pull this move out right now. Oh, look at me. So listen, guys, my radar is something that just happened on Tuesday officially, and it was the, I guess the initiation or the definition or the recognition of the Bureau of Cyberspace and Digital Policy. Now, this is a bureau underneath the Department of State, or the Secretary of State agency, right? So the cabinet level Secretary of State. Now, the Secretary of State is responsible for typically foreign affairs, right? So think of like ambassadors, they're kind of tied into the State Department. Obviously the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright was a famous one. John Kerry, I think, was one. Like, they go and represent the United States in foreign spaces. The Bureau of Cyberspace and Digital Policy's mission is it's according to the thing here, it's to address national security challenges, economic opportunities, and values considerations presented by cyberspace, digital technologies, digital policy, and promote standards and norms that are fair, transparent, and support our values. So I was like, what is this all about? So a couple things. I did some research. I talked to some people. First off, the State Department's actually kind of way behind. Right now, if you think about the ambassador for France or the ambassador for the Netherlands, right? Cyberspace is this own world. It doesn't care about geographical boundaries. It doesn't recognize, currency, right? It uses a lot of decentralized currency. So we are essentially setting up like an ambassador at large who is going to be the interface into the cyberspace realm. So think about this. Can you imagine in 10 years having like the ambassador to Metaverse or the ambassador to Roblox, right? This is kind of what's going on. I'm being a little tongue in cheek with it, but this is what this is about. Now, they are going to be defining norms, and I think it'll be treated as like international norms for behavior and policy within the cybersecurity realm. And I find this wildly fascinating because if you look at what happened or what is happening in Ukraine right now, Ukraine basically asked the world from a crowdsourcing perspective, I don't care what nationality you are or what country you align with. If you want to be part of the IT army, here's a list of assets you can attack. Come join the cause. Glory to Ukraine. And like that doesn't align to borders or national identity or anything. So there's this I mean, again, this is why I was saying they're a little late to the game. There's this transformation of identity of who you are and what you align with. So I applaud the United States for putting this in place and wanting to do it. Now, here's my second thing that kind of caused me to tip my head and be like, what the hell? So the official over it right now is Jennifer Bacchus. You can see her right here. Degree in economics, speaks 5 languages. I might be off by one, but she is a career bureaucrat. And I talked to my source and I said, listen, why are they putting a bureaucrat in charge of cyber policy? Like, I don't get that. And I was told, oh, dude, when you stand up something like this, there's going to be a lot of Washington, D.C. infighting because basically this department is going to be taking power away from other departments. Right now, it's pretty splintered, right? The NSA has their thing, FBI has their thing, right? There's different branches and agencies that have pieces of cyber, and this is partially a consolidation. So you need a career diplomat or a bureaucrat to be able to navigate those waters, to be able to actually solidify the power of this bureau to actually be effective and do something. So, basically initiate kind of your classic storm norm form, right? So she's going to get in there, consolidate power, establish what's going on, and then hand it over to some elected or assigned ambassador at large who will effectively be the face and interface to the cyberspace. So that's what's on my radar, guys. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Nothing can be cured without adding just a little bit more government, because we already have departments and committees and now a bureau, and it's a good place to put your socks. It's just more and more. We have 15 standards. Let's make a new one. Now we have 16 standards. I'm sorry, call me skeptical, Steve. You always have known me that way, Jerry. I don't see how this helps much of anything, but it looks like movement.
Eric, what are your thoughts?
So people in Charleston will know this term when I say I just want to go play on the 526 interchange in traffic right about 5 o'clock. This just screams another kind of what you were saying. Show me a government agency that has run well, and I'll show you, some explicit terms. But, I don't know, man. This just seems like a massive dumpster fire to me. This is short and sweet of putting this thing. I mean, I just don't see how this is going to benefit a freaking thing by any means. So let's get a little there's this whole thing that I'm not very familiar with of the new world order that's being thrown around in the political sphere. Is this by chance anything to do with that garbage?
I don't think so. I think that this is the United States effort to identify cyberspace as a realm, although it's not a physical one you can travel to. It's a realm that is mostly been seen as a potential military theater, but now with decentralized currency and the metaverse turning into a thing and digital assets, they're realizing that this is something that they want to have federal influence on defining what is appropriate, what is normal. Like just to give you a quick real example, somebody filed sexual harassment charges because they were sexually harassed in the metaverse. So like an avatar walked up and just like was on their avatar going at it, and like they didn't like it, they felt violated. Okay.
Yeah.
That took place in the metaverse. The person that was doing the violation, they could have been in Maldives, and the individual who was feeling threatened or harassed could be in Canada. Whose laws apply here? Who is defining what is okay? And if it's the big tech firm that's defining acceptable use or whatever, that's fine. You get removed from the platform, but there's no criminal, judicial, nothing that can be mapped to this because
Mhm.
it's not on soil belonging to a nation state. And I think this is part of their effort of trying to like get their arms around it to define, like I said, norms and standards, and basically try to use US power, to help influence that. I'm sure to the benefit of us, but that's what I suspect is going on.
Yeah, I think the Department of State or the State Department is probably the right one to start working on those treaties, right? Because they are responsible for all that, foreign diplomacy and whatnot, and try to figure out how are we going to figure this stuff out. We have just built this massive societal impacting technology, not just built it. It's been around for decades now, but we have layered trillions and trillions of dollars worth of economic power on here, and political power and social power on here. We've built it, everybody came, and now we don't know what the heck to do with it. How do we prevent it from just completely collapsing society? And yeah, we need to get people to start talking to each other and reach agreements. But I think the people who will reach agreements are mostly the ones who are kind of in agreement already. They're just going to solidify it, and then you're going to have your heavy duty actors that we don't get along with, and they would say the same about us, going to not do anything in that space or agree to anything that we want. So again, I don't know that they'll actually get anywhere, but I mean, the intent is good, because if the internet comes tumbling down, everything comes tumbling down with it, because we've built so much on top of it.
This just goes back to the whole 80s song that, we built this city on rock. Sorry. But
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, this is the WMD we built, and we're going to see if it destroys us or not.
Sweet Elm, Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely. We will see. I mean, there's no question that the metaverse, for lack of a better term, Web3, decentralized currency, all these things are here, and they're getting more promotion and stuff like that. And just even with the fact that we just saw this conflict in Eastern Europe begin to show the first kind of international conflict that had cyber as a capability. Now, granted, they used a lot more of kinetic, and they still are using a lot more kinetic, but there was initial volleys with cyber weaponry. It's always been kind of talked about as like, this will be cyber Pearl Harbor in the next one. It didn't look like that, and I'm kind of curious as to why. But I think by them trying to define this bureau, they're trying to, I don't know if they're trying to frame the problem as we need to treat it as a country, so we're going to start developing policy as if it is a country, or, and this is kind of a radical thought, guys, you tell me if I'm off my rocker, the concept of the nation state is beginning to become deprecated as a concept. So applying a solution like this with a bureau to interface with cyberspace is a square peg round hole problem. But the problem is the current way of thinking at the federal executive level is that they only have a toolbox full of round pegs. So, or you know what I mean? Like you can't solve that problem with any of the current tooling. You need new thinking.
So your question, are you off your rocker? I mean, yes, of course you're off your rocker. We've always known that, though, but it has nothing to do with your question. But no, I think you're right. We have this thing that is completely anti-government, anti-structure, right? It's not about anonymity. It's about empowering everybody. It is about all the things that the internet has provided us and the technology stuff has provided us. Safety, security, privacy. We've given up all those things for the technology because they don't go together, and we're not quite yet prepared for what that new world looks like. And how do we pull it back if we decide what we've built is not something we can survive?
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. Eric, any final thoughts before we thank everybody for joining us today?
Yeah, just just stay alert. As always, look at your stuff. The people who are in chat know this is not part of the Matrix. We're watching that, so everybody get it. You know what? Let's just do something different. Everybody, shut your technology off for the weekend. Go outside and play a little bit. I know here in South Carolina, things are starting to warm up. We may go, try so it may be a little too cold for the community pool, but we may try to do that this weekend.
It's gonna be chilly this weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice though. Steve, any final thoughts? And thank you again for being our initial panelist.
No, just really pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Hopefully, everyone who is tuning in got some good tips out of there, and keep coming back week after week because Jerry is always putting it on.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful weekend. And this was What's on Your Radar. Take care.